a special education attorney, and this is part of our IEP 504 series that we've been hosting. So Holly is with us because we've had a couple of very specific questions come up, and Holly has graciously agreed to give us some of her time today to talk about some of this. So thank you for joining us, Holly.
Thank you for having me. I like this stuff. This is fun.
This will be so helpful to parents. But one of the things we really kind of wanted to focus on today is sort of having to sign the IEP and 504 document at the table itself. I know that a lot of school districts use like the iPad thing, and you kind of get to the end of the meeting. It's like, do you agree? Do you not agree? Okay, here's the iPad, sign the iPad. And there's kind of a lot of pressure within the room to sign right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it would be really helpful to bring you on today and talk about to talk about that. I mean, do you have to? I mean, can you review? I mean, how does all of that work?
I mean, the short answer is no. You do not have to, and I know this for several reasons, but one of those reasons is that I never do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a daughter who's on an IEP, and I don't know that I've ever signed at the table, and especially now that they've gone to the iPad thing, I couldn't sign at the table because I couldn't read it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they were going to give me their iPad. I've never asked, but I don't know, maybe. So I'm just not comfortable with it. I really like my school. They do a good job. I have no problem with them. I haven't had any problems, but I'm not comfortable signing something that I can't read or don't have the ability and the time to read. And so, yeah, I always say no. They will send IEPs a lot of times on these on the special education sort of network system thing they have. And for me, that's hard to read because I can't print it off and I can't save it and play with it and whatever I need to do. So I asked them to send me it in PDF.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. And then I take my 5 days. I usually just have a few changes. Usually it's just mistakes because they're human and I'm human, and or things that we kind of glossed over a little bit that are a little more important than I thought they would be or something. And it's easy peasy. They make them and they send it back to me and I sign it online and I send it back. No big deal.
Very nice. One of the things that's kind of always confused me, I know, is, people are sitting there with their computers and they're typing on their computers and they're making live changes to the document while they're sitting there on the computer, but then they pick up an iPad and they pass the iPad around for signatures.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always kind of going, how do I know?
I don't think you do. I mean, you could ask. I mean, my solution is I just don't sign it. So I've never really thought to ask because I know when I go into the room that I'm not. I don't do that as a personal practice. Ours are stressful.
Yeah.
I'm. This is what I do for a living, and I get really stressed as a parent, and might cry a couple of times before just out of stress, and that is not abnormal because I know other parents do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to sign something while I'm that stressed. I don't think it's a good idea. I need to go home and relax and not think about it for the rest of the day and then pick it up the next day and look at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And I don't say anything wrong with that. It doesn't mean that I don't trust them. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that that's what I need to do to take care of myself and my daughter.
Right. And does the same apply to 504?
Does the 504 have the same 5-day waiting period? I don't go to as many 504 meetings. I usually only go to IEP meetings, but
I want to say it does. It's been, I mean, we've been on an IEP for a couple of years, but it seems like I was asked the question about a 5-day waiting period when we had a 504.
So the thing about 504 plans is, and this is weird, and but they don't even have to be in writing. There's no law that says they even have to be written down. So you get far less protection when it comes to 504. So I mean, since it doesn't even have to be written down, your signature, it sounds kind of like a moot point. Just they don't even have to write it down. I've never heard of a school not writing it down. I've heard of a school, not doing a 504 plan, so I didn't have one, but I've never heard of a school saying, oh, we don't have to write it down. We shouldn't do that, because it is highly recommended by OCR, I think it's OCR, that you do write it down, just because, the guidance says you probably should do this anyway. You really should do this anyway. But there's no actual law that says you have to. So again, you get far less protections when it comes to 504 than if you have an IEP. But personally, I mean, I don't, from a practical standpoint, I think the same applies.
Mm-hmm.
Stressed out. Why can't you take a day to do it? I don't want to sign it. Please send it to me. I don't see the reason for the pushback, honestly. I don't.
Having spent my entire career dealing with contracts, what I don't like is, you're making live changes.
Mm-hmm.
I just want the chance to be able to read that, to process, to make sure that it all got there, to make sure that, like you said earlier, nothing was glossed over. All of my points were made. And you're right, you're stressed out. So maybe you forget something. Maybe you're like, wait a minute, I wanted to scratch this accommodation or add this accommodation, or can you do this or something?
Yeah, you probably will forget something, because there's a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Those documents are 20, 30, 40 pages, depending upon how many supplements you have. And
Right.
it is stressful. I forget things. This last one, I actually went in and asked them to add a portion to the deliberations, and just to say, and I wrote it out for them, um, per Holly Terrell on the state after the meeting, I asked, she asked that this be added to the deliberations, and then colon, and then it has a little paragraph I wanted to say about ESY or something. And they added it. It's obvious. It says, it wasn't talked about during the meeting, that I added it afterwards. It's very transparent, and it was no big deal. So I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to your question. I don't think I answered it. What was your question?
I don't even remember.
I think we got off on a tangent, and I'm like, I am not answering whatever the question was, so I need to stop and go back. Sorry.
No, because I had formed another question in my head that to me kind of pertains to this. So I think I let my other question go. That's my short attention span. So, one, I know from personal experience, one of the things that I ran into was I pushed back on signing at the table. And the team struggled with that, and they were under the impression that if I didn't sign right then and there, that we had to reconvene and hold another ARD just for me to sign.
That's not true. I think a lot of times these things come down to, you have the people at the ARD meeting, and different schools have different cultures, and if that's what they've been told by someone above them, then that's just the way it is. And right. They, not saying they shouldn't know better, because they should know better, but they don't. And so yeah, it's not true. You're not disagreeing. You're just taking your 5 days that you get. That's your procedural right. And now, if you disagree, or table the ARD, in disagreement, then yes, it comes back in 10 days. But if you just want a chance to look it over, but honestly, even if okay, we're going to have to come back in 10 days. Okay, just send it to me. And then you go back and forth and end up signing it. It's taken care of, I guess. You wouldn't end up coming back in that 10 days because 5 days is shorter than 10. But it's, I mean, it's kind of sad that that the schools don't know these things. But then again, they're special education law and all, it's complicated, and I get confused about the days and which day and what if this happens, and sometimes my brain gets a little jumbled and I say something weird, but so just giving kind of the benefit of the doubt in some circumstances, depending on the situation.
One of our leaders sent me a question that they wanted me to ask you since we were coming on today. So this particular example is the evaluation for special education was requested in January.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the school shut down in early March, initially for spring break, but then they just didn't come back from spring break. Mm-hmm. So the 45-day evaluation period would have run out probably mid to late March, depending on where you requested it during the month of January. So it's sort of a robust question of, did the clock stop? Did the clock keep going? The evaluations aren't happening. What is the parent's rights? Should it have kept happening? Do they have to wait until fall? Can they request an IEE? How does that work?
This area right now, obviously, this is new. This hasn't happened before, so this is murky. Now, if we go by the letter of the law, then the timelines don't stop. I mean, the Department of Education has, they came down and responded to all those requests for waivers, and they didn't grant any waivers for that issue. However, it kind of gets into more of a practical discussion of what does that look like, and what are you going to do about it? So you can't really force, a school to have face-to-face contact with the kid. I just don't see anyone being able to do that or wanting to do that. Now, TEA did put out some guidance, and it basically says that, hey, we get this is hard and you can't do the observations, which we can't. We're not in school right now. We can't do school observations. We get that. But do what you can do. And, there are things you can do. I know IEE providers, independent evaluators who are doing evaluations or partial evaluations, and they are doing some of them online and, like we're doing right now. And some of them, they'll use some kind of barrier and different things. And I think it depends on what you're testing for. I know I talked to an evaluator, and she said if she was looking at a kid with possible autism, that she would want to be in the room with him or her. But, for other things, it might not be as necessary. So there are things you can do. But as, like I said, the letter of the law says no, you've got to still do it. But again, you're going to file due process against the school. It's going to be hard to maintain those causes of action against the school in Texas, especially, because you're going to be pretty unsympathetic wanting your evaluation. So something else I would take into account is, do you really need this evaluation now? And I think everyone's knee-jerk reaction is, well, yeah. And sometimes you do. It might be an initial evaluation. You might have been asking for a really long time. Or it might be a reeval, and you might be, fine with what's going on, and you don't think that much is going to change, and you like your PLAF statements, and you're good, and you can kind of, wait until we come back to school. And so, given that the schools are struggling, well, whatever is happening, and however good of a job or bad of a job they're doing, and some are doing a really good job and some are not doing a really good job. And I think everyone's struggling. So kind of, I think it's nice to allow them to at least prioritize those evaluations. Hopefully they're doing it, right. But
Yeah. So given the current situation, if a parent did try to request an IEE, what verbiage should they try to use?
And request an IEE in lieu of the school evaluating, you mean?
Yeah. Because the clock is run out.
Because the clock has, yeah. Well, I gotta go back. Like normally you get, an IEE after the school evaluates and you disagree with the evaluation. There is some case law where, it says if the school won't evaluate, then you still get your IEE. If you wanted to go ahead and request an IEE, I'm trying to think of verbiage I would use. I generally always, actually, no, I'm going to say it back. I always recommend trying to, catching bees with honey, I guess, and going in and, trying to make it a collaborative effort. And how can we, figure this out so my daughter or son can get the evaluation they really need? And, then just state the facts like you just told me. I requested the IE on this date. I know there's a 45-day school day timeline that ended on this date. I understand that it's really hard right now, and in another circumstance I would wait or whatever. You don't even have to say that, you could. But I need it, because of this and this. Now, these are not things you have to do. You don't have to say these things, but just, from working with schools for a while now, these things tend to work better. Just kind of lay out what you're thinking, who you're looking at using, and why you need it, things like that, and just trying to work together with the school. Another tactic that I use a lot, and it's almost not even a tactic. I think it's just it's just the way I am, maybe. But is I seem to get better results if I can let things be the school's idea, not my idea. So if, you could write an initial email or something that says, hey, this is going on and I haven't got this, the timelines run out. I really need the test because of this, and this. What do you think we should do? Kind of that. And sometimes you'll be surprised they will come up with the answer maybe you wanted. So, but those are just different tactics that I've used and been successful with.
That's been great. Or thank you so much for that. So like I've kind of set this up to where I wanted this to be pretty concise. And I think that we've done that. We're going to have you on a few more times and talk about a couple of different issues, because I wanted to break down our time with you in chunks that parents can kind of digest very specific topics at very specific points. So the next one's going to be really great because we're going to talk about FAPE. And
are we doing Andrew?
Andrew's in the fall.
Andrew's in the fall. Okay, I can remember. Andrew FAPE or other FAPE?
Yeah, no, the next one's definitely going to be about FAPE, because I think FAPE was going to be a really great discussion, and then to move into Andrew, especially going into the new school year, whatever form that's going to look, and give parents kind of the summer to take a break from all of this.
Take a break. Hopefully send their kids to ESY.
Hopefully. We should probably talk about that too at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we'll broaden the next one to FAPE and ESY.
I think ESY is part of FAPE, especially right now. So.
Excellent point. So thank you so much for this today, and everybody have a great weekend, and We're going to be back with Holly on the 31st to talk about faith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly.
Bye.